Acceptance is embracing life on its own terms. I'm Tony Neal, and today we've got a very exciting program for you. But first, let me introduce to you Barry. Just excuse me for a second while I get my technology all sorted out. And Barry, tell me what you do.
Hi, Tony. Look, I'm the CEO of the Vision School, and really generically, I'm known as the Blockbuster. And what I do in my life, I guess, is to try to use the principles of the virtues as a way of living. And the two in particular that I absolutely love are mindfulness, and to spend my life trying to be mindful and aware. And the other one I really love is the virtue of unity, the virtue of coming together, which is really a key reason why I'm here. So, look, I just want to welcome everyone here to this amazing program of Let's Talking Virtues. I'm excited about what we're going to be doing. And Tony, I just want to ask you the same question. Tell us about yourself and why the virtues.
Thank you, Barry. Well, I call myself Tony, the Wellbeing Pathfinder, and what I actually do is I help individuals with customised retreats, workshops and consultations to maximise their feelings of vibrance, purpose, happiness, health and success. I help individuals find their powerful true self. And I found one way of doing that is through the virtues. The virtues, to me, like what you've said, is to be first of all mindful of what you're doing and how you're acting and how you're speaking. And this is part of the virtues strategies, and that's what really attracted me. I love the virtues. I could tell a story, but I might tell that a little bit later. But I had some sort of adversity in my life, and I found that virtues was the path for me, being the pathfinder, towards running retreats and things like that. And it was the virtues that gave me a lot of clarity in my life, helping me with my path so that I could ultimately help other people in their paths.
All right. Thanks, Tony. Look, I know we've got our guest here already, and I know we're going to talk to each other a little bit more about how the virtues affect us individually, but I'd love to introduce Valerie Hess. Welcome, Valerie.
Hi, glad to be here.
Valerie is the chairperson of the Virtues Project International Association. We just know it as VPIA. I'm really honoured to have you here in our first show. Valerie, can you just tell us how do the virtues fit into you? I mean, it must be very important to become part of the association.
Absolutely. I found the Virtues Project at a time when I was working with troubled youth, running programs for them, and very disillusioned with what our systems had to offer, our legal systems, social service systems, and such had to offer. But I was working with it within that system. But when I found the Virtues Project, I immediately knew that everything that we were doing was going to go out the window and be replaced with the Virtues Project because it made sense, because it was authentic, it was beautiful, it was totally strength-based. So my journey in was through working with troubled youth. And then joining the organization was because this is too important. It's so necessary, so needed everywhere in the world under so many different situations that I said, this is what I'll do for the rest of my life. And I transitioned from a 15-year career working with troubled youth into just doing whatever I could to serve the organization.
Wow. Look, thank you. Look, we want to talk about why the virtues are important. And as you said about throwing things out the window, I want to throw out everything that we're going to talk about, because there's some news that have just literally happened that I think really express the important need of the virtues. Do you want to share what's just happened recently?
Well, sadly, there was another school shooting yesterday or the day before. I think it was probably the day before yesterday. And it just breaks my heart that once again there's another school shooting. And the Virtues Project one of the things that sparked it was the growing violence among youth in the United States. And that was back in 1988. And here we are at 2022, and it's still happening. But the Virtues Project, sprung up out of, such a concern to create something that could help families and help the youth. And yet here we are in 2022 with several school shootings in the U.S. But it just really touched me because I heard a message that the shooter had left behind. He is gone, a teacher is gone, and a student is gone as a result of this school shooting. But it said, there was a note, and it was described as a perfect storm for a mass shooter. And Orlando Harris, 19, left a manifesto-like note in his car before storming Central Visual and Performing Arts High School with an AR-15 style rifle and at least 600 rounds of ammo Monday, killing 2 and injuring 7 others. It was on Tuesday. He wrote, "I don't have any friends. I don't have any family. I've never had a girlfriend. I've never had a social life. I've been an isolated loner my entire life." This was a perfect storm for a mass shooter, according to the commissioner when he read the note. And I agree. And what's so hard for me is to know that I believe with my whole heart that had this school embraced the Virtues Project and the strategies of the Virtues Project, this would not happen, because that child would not have felt alone. He would have had family, because it really develops a caring, kind, safe community in which everyone thrives when we use the strategies of the Virtues Project. So it is it's very important to me, and I see it all the time. I see where it can make a difference in eliminating so much violence in the world, in homes, in communities, in schools. But I'm especially passionate about youth, having worked with them for so long. And no child should ever feel that way. We're missing something. And I want schools to know, if they embrace this, they're not going to have to worry. If they truly are embracing it and living those strategies, that school will transform before their eyes. So will they, the students, the families, everybody that interacts, because that's how powerful these strategies are.
And I think that the fact that this has just occurred at this moment of time, just as we start to look at these 100 virtues, and not only that, but today we're going to look at the virtue of acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
And this is acceptance for everyone involved, and it's a really tough one at times, because we can all have an opinion about what's right, what should happen, and what shouldn't happen. But in looking at this virtue of acceptance, I think that there may be some clue about how do we move forward and how do we feel about this. Just before I read this, Tony, did you want to make a comment about how you feel about what's just happened? Because it's quite incredible, really.
It's a real shock to me, and I think it's just an indictment on what's been happening in society. We've lost touch with humanity. We've lost touch with community. We've lost touch with our families. I think that's so important that that virtues comes into play, and I feel now is the time to raise awareness of the virtues and the messages that they bring to us. And it's just not the actual words that count, it's the way how we behave and the way how we act towards each other. You see on the news, it's all about war and doom and gloom. How about we spin that around? We spin it around so that we do good things and kind things to each other. We unify. We help each other. That's the message that we want to get across. And that's just what the virtues is all about. Acting in such a way that it helps humanity move forward. That to me is the big message.
And what Tony and I have wanted to do is to look at all these virtue cards and choose a virtue every week. 2 weeks will be almost the next 2 years. We are so committed to this. And so I'm looking forward to where we're looking at Zeal and celebrating Zeal at the end of 2 years.
That's right.
I want to read the acceptance card, but just before I do, Valerie or Tony, I don't mind which. Valerie, we might come to you. Where did these cards actually come from?
these cards were written by Linda Kavalin Popoff, and probably with the help of her husband Dan, Dr. Dan Popoff, and her brother John Kavalin weighed in because they were the founders of the Virtues Project. But Linda is really a writer and really loves to eloquently help us to learn the meaning of virtues in our life and in relation to others. So
I do a lot of work with vibration and frequency, and the vibration frequency of these cards is just incredible. And I believe that they're divinely inspired. That they're just the information in them just seems to touch my soul every time I read them. So I'm just really honoured to be part of this. Tony, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I do. When I read them, I can feel it's God's language to my heart.
Yeah.
That's just such a strong and pure message.
And the
virtues connect your heart and your mind. They bring it together, and then you're in relationship to others. That heart-to-heart connection forms too. Beautiful.
So what I might do is let's start with this acceptance. It seems like a perfect time for all of us to start with this wonderful word. And I'll read the card first, and then we'll all have a chat about it, I think. And it says, acceptance is embracing life on its own terms. We are open to what is rather than wishing for something different. We face the truth in all circumstances with honesty and courage. Acceptance helps us to bend without breaking in the winds of tests, to gather the lessons and step forward with new wisdom and awareness. We affirm others and ourselves for the qualities we do have and avoid judgment and criticism for what we don't have. Accepting myself allows me to give what I have to the world. And on the back of the card, it gives you a bit more depth about how we can apply that. And it continues on and says, the greatest gift that you can give to others is the gift of unconditional love and acceptance. And the practice of acceptance. I receive my tests with humour and grace. I seek the truth in all I experience. I accept the things I cannot change. I trust there is some good in whatever happens. I accept my intimates as they are. I trust that I am a person of value. And then finally, there's a gratitude. I am thankful for the gift of acceptance. It brings me serenity. And I think this is such a beautiful card to start the series, and given what's happened, to really delve in and to look at that practice of acceptance. So, Valerie, I'm going to start with you as our honoured guest. Can you tell us what acceptance means for you from there?
Mm-hmm. I'll share how the card is speaking with me, and I'll also share that you can get it on an app, and I'm looking at my app because it's easier for me to see than the screen. So, acceptance is really about just, embracing what is rather than wishing it were different or wishing people were different. And so I know that my life became a lot more joyful for me when I did more of that, when I was able to walk through life more, just embracing whatever was in front of me, not wishing that it were something different, a different day. Although I do often say I wish there were more than 24 hours in a day. So that's a little bit of a lack of acceptance.
And Tony, what about you?
I think the line that stands out most for me is, I accept the things I cannot change. And that's in the middle. That's the third line of their practice. For me, that's a very important thing, because you cannot go back into time and change something. Mm-hmm. It's all about, so it can be a bad thing that's happened to you or whatever. You've just got to accept that that's happened. What can I do better the next time?
Yeah.
And so that to me is a lesson learned, and not to sort of get hung up in the past.
Yeah.
When I run retreats, we find that a lot of people come to a retreat because they've had a problem which they've carried a resentment for 10, 20 years because a partner cheated on you or something like that. Can
Yeah.
you imagine that? Carrying that resentment for so long. And that's why illness happens. For me, I can remember one particular incident where I was bullied, and having accepted that I was bullied, needed to have a look at myself. And fortunately, what's happened in the future is I came across the virtues, and the virtues is one thing that actually helped me conquer being bullied. And now I practice a strength called assertiveness, so I don't allow myself to be bullied. And that's one of the things that we also teach about being the CEO of yourself. That's the most important thing. We forget about that. And I think that's so important to accept that we are really the CEO of it. We allow things to happen and to practice the virtues that we need to strengthen our lives, because there's just so many great virtues out there. This card speaks very loudly to me. Back to you, Barry.
Oh, thanks, Tony. I'm going to use the line for myself. I trust that I am a person of value. And I just almost reiterate what you said, Tony. I know, look, as a teenager, I grew up very judgmental. I grew up as a process of survival, if you like, by putting other people down to make me feel good, because I didn't feel good about myself. And it's only over the years, and it's been through some major diversity that occurred, that I had to go, okay, what's going on here? This is not a way that I want to live. And what was really interesting is I created a board game called Conversations, and I was in New Zealand in a cafe, and I needed to change the word unconditional love to take it into a corporate setting. I felt like unconditional love was going to be too much for me. And I was really brave, and I stood up in this cafe and I said to everyone, can anyone give me another word for unconditional love? I'm really stuck. And instead of hoo-haing me, everyone got involved. Every table was talking about unconditional love. The waiters were talking about unconditional love. You know, there's this amazing aspect. And people talked about tolerance and you know, putting up with almost. And then finally, someone on one of the tables said, I think the word is acceptance. And it really struck to me that acceptance and unconditional love to me go hand in hand. That you know, when I can accept someone fully for who they are, then I am showing unconditional love. And it really is, you know, I then also become a value, is what it talks about. And for me, the change happens when I decide to make that change for myself. So I'm just so happy that we have this card. I really am excited about having this card as our first card. Valerie, did you want to add any more to that?
Well, I think we're approaching this, you know, with a lot of seriousness, and I want you to know that we can also have fun. And I love the first line in the practice is, I receive my tests with humor and grace. So I like those times where when I'm done beating myself up or whatever, I can find something to laugh about in it, because you know, I say things like, I accept things I cannot change after I've given it a darn good try to do it my way. When I finally realize I can't change it, then I accept it. So, you know, we look at our weaknesses and our strengths, but with a little bit of laughter there. So, and I like to look at it, you know, where do I feel like I'm nailing it, and where do I feel like I need to do some work, but then try to do it with a little bit of humor and grace. So, yeah, these cards are just about helping to awaken us to who we are and where we're going and where we're on in the path.
I'm really curious, Valerie, how did you find out about the Virtues Project in the first place? Like, what was it that drew you there?
Well, for me, it had to do with a faith community that I belonged to, and there happened to be a big annual conference that would happen, and different speakers and things happening, and the Virtues Project was there. And I wouldn't have gone, probably. I would have picked something else on the list, but my best friend said, I think we should go to this. You know, we've both been struggling in our work life. She worked in a hospital, and still does. And I was working with troubled youth, and we were both disillusioned with the systems that we were in. She said, maybe this will give us some clues. And so hearing the founders of the Virtues Project talk about the Virtues Project, we both decided we'd go and receive training, because we knew right away it was part of our answer. And she, being right Johnny on the spot, signed up and went to a training in Minneapolis, which is one state over from where we live in Wisconsin. And I, of course, procrastinated, so I had to go to Canada because that was where the next training was. But I was very excited to go. And I, at the time, had a 12-year-old daughter. I took her with me, and she also ended up being trained in the Virtues Project as a teenager, and
Wow.
did a brilliant job at a 5-day training.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Look, my situation's a little bit similar, but it was actually Tony that I went to visit in Melbourne when I was living in Australia. And I went across to visit Tony, and we had an event planned. And he said, "Oh, that's been cancelled. We're going to a Virtues Project." And I thought it was some religious event. So I was a bit worried. I was thinking, because virtues to me, I think I had a church feel. And I'm thinking, what's he doing to me? Anyway, I remember going along, and we did a virtues pick, a bit similar to like choosing this card acceptance. And they talked about the strategies, and the very first strategy, and I still use that when I teach it today, about using the language of the virtues. And the very simple act, if someone says thank you when you open the door, is really, wonderful these days if you get that. But when we can name the action and the virtue, for example, the really simple one is thank you for your kindness in opening the door. And that, to me, that one sentence changed my whole view of what these virtues was about. And I went and did, like yourselves, I went and did, weekend courses, and then eventually became an instructor in the virtues as well, because I just wanted to know what was the depth that was behind that.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been in a really lucky situation that this is probably 15 years ago, Tony, I'd have to say.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
Tony and I still ring each other up. And when we talk, and we might ring up and say, "Oh, this is not fair. This has happened to me today." And the other one always goes, "What's the virtue that we need here?" There's no poor you. It's like, what's the virtue that we need?
That's right.
Yep. And in everything there's virtue. And that's just so much fun to really explore that. And it's so powerful when people approach maybe an awful situation in their life, in their personal life, their work life, they feel a lot of shame. But when we say, what was the virtue? What virtues did you have to use in that situation? Because it's there. And what virtues were needed? It changes the whole feeling and gives you such strength. And it lifts that shame and blame out of the picture. It's just very, very powerful. I love that's the second strategy. That's teachable moments.
And great. We're going to be learning those throughout the year, and certainly, go to thevirtuesproject.com, have a look. A lot of this information is there. We're going to talk about that a little bit shortly. I just want to finally, Tony, I want to ask you about how did you get started? Because you sent me along. I never actually asked you, how did you get started with the virtues yourself?
With the virtues, I mentioned earlier that part of my career was in project management, and I had a boss that wasn't so nice, and he was a bit of a bully, and he'd bully me around, and he asked me to do something which I believe was unethical, in other words, tell fibs, and I don't do that. I'm sorry. And he didn't like it, and all of a sudden I got all these performance reviews, and I got bullied, and I went with the part of the performance review. Guess who was the person who was the reviewer? My boss. So I was on, one could say, on death row, right? So I left that organisation, and I was feeling pretty low, as you could imagine. And I was blessed because in that path I found Derek Patton, who came to one of our meditation sessions that we'd hold every Wednesday. And he introduced me to the virtues, and I'm very thankful and glad that happened. And it was through the virtues that I learnt how to deal with bullies.
Wow.
And this is something that's so powerful. So I look at it even though I went through something really horrible, if you got, because it was very humiliating what actually happened to me, that I was able to find the strength within me that I needed, and that was via the virtues. And I look at this one line that that out of this acceptance card, I trust that there is some good in whatever happens. And this is a teachable moment, as one of the things that Valerie just mentioned. It was a good lesson for me. It was an aha moment. Oh, I let myself be bullied. And that's exactly what happened. You become a victim.
Yeah.
And through my work, I've done a lot of work with NLP and things like that. And one of the things there is be the creator rather than the victor.
Yes.
And so one of the strengths that the virtues taught me is to be more assertive. And that's being creating what you want to do. And that's so powerful for me. And it was a wonderful message that came through the virtues. And I love the virtues. And I've done a lot of mentoring. I've been mentoring other project managers. I also been doing a lot of work with health retreats, and I'm mentor and companion, which is another method of the virtue strategies with the clients I have on the health retreats, and they all love the virtues.
Yeah.
We part of the things is that we part of the package is we sell them a pack of the virtues card, and they love it. It's part of the package, and they read the cards and they say, "Wow, how does it?" They're getting
Well, I
all
really
those.
love, Tony,
They're
I really
getting all
love
their
when you
those.
talk about virtues, how you bring all the other virtues into it. It's never just one virtue with you.
Right.
You
Oh,
know?
that's right. It's like a tree, isn't it?
It just
It
keeps going. So I think that's really cool.
Yep. You
is
can
said
really
that.
just focus on one, but you grow many.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is said that if you're 100% in one, you're really 100% in all of them. So that's something for us to think about.
Oh, that's a big statement. As we look, we're almost just about out of time. Look, just to let people know, if you're interested in the virtues cards or want to have a look at those, if you go to the virtuesproject.com, there's a whole lot of information. We really suggest go and have a look. We invite you to support that organisation. Tony and I are here 100% just simply to support the Virtues Project. Valerie, there's also an event coming up called the 2022 Global Mentorship, and it's on November the 19th. We're going to encourage people to have a look at that. It may be, if you want to jump in a little bit deeper, that might be one way of starting your journey. And do you know, is that online or is that in person, Val?
That's going to be an online mentorship. It'll be on Zoom, and it's a great introduction to the 5 strategies of the Virtues Project. You'll be learning from facilitators around the world. You'll be hearing from the founders of the Virtues Project, and it's by donation to attend. So if you go to virtuesproject.com, a pop-up will appear. You can click in depending on your hemisphere in the world and know how to be a part of the 2022 Global Mentorship for the Virtues Project.
Oh, look, thank you very much. And look, we're just about out of time. I just want to finish up by doing a quick acknowledgement of each other. And Valerie, I just want to acknowledge your acceptance of everyone that you come across for being part of the VPIA and just embracing everyone into that community. I really want to acknowledge the love that you've actually put into there. So I want to thank you for that. And Tony, I want to acknowledge you for your acceptance of me over the years. Every time I've said something's going on and you've thrown a virtue and challenge at me to say you can be better than who you are. So thank you both for being on it. Tony, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'd like to do some acknowledgements too. First of all, I'd love to acknowledge Valerie. Valerie has been with the Virtues Project for so long, and we've both shared the ups and downs of the actual Virtues Project in VPIA. We've sailed some stormy waters, and we kept going. And I like to acknowledge Valerie for her steadfastness and her resilience, for keep on keeping on and keep going through all those stormy waters, and to be the leader that she is. She leads. She's a living demonstration of a leader, and she's very humble about that as well. And she's always saying, "Oh, I'll step aside," but I think Valerie, you do such a wonderful job. I think we'd all be in tears if you stepped aside. And Barry, thank you for your idealism. I love how you work with people. I've seen what you do. You raise people's vibration and frequency through just love, and that's what it's all about. And you love to help people, and I'd love to acknowledge the work that you do with other people and clients, and for helping with this actual broadcast to raise awareness of the virtues. And the world needs this sort of raising of the consciousness of what virtues is really all about. Back to you, Barry.
Look, thank you, Tony. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Valerie. Look, next, we're looking forward to sharing with everyone. Tony, we're going to just finish up. We're actually out of time already. So would you like to let people know what's on next week? And thank you, Valerie, again, for being on our wonderful very first show.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Barry and I are very excited of continuing on. So our next episode will be November the 11th, I think, for the Western Hemisphere. And we have a very important virtue that we're going to talk about. And that's accountability. And so that'll be absolutely marvelous. And I think that's something that we all need lots of and to keep us on track. So on that note, I think we will just close off. And I'd like to thank Valerie and Barry for their beautiful contributions.
Thanks, Tony.
Bye.
Hang on, we haven't closed off yet.